Okay, well, maybe the groove isn't that slow, but you know what I mean. There very well could be a groove that slow though, depending on what genre of music. You never know what you might run into, so you want to be prepared. Side note. Okay, back on track. We've all struggled with not rushing whenever we're playing somewhere below that 70 BPM mark. How can we overcome this so that we can play relaxed and comfortably at a slow tempo without wanting to rush? I'll give you 3 technique tips that I believe can help you a lot, and we'll wrap up by discussing something that you can do away from the kit that'll also help you out a lot. Hey everybody, welcome to The Non-Glamorous Drummer. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's head down to the kit and see if we can eliminate our rushing problems. First, I just want to address a couple of side notes that are important things to note before we get going into this discussion. And one is that there isn't really a specific tempo threshold below which it's always easy to rush. It depends a ton player to player, which I know you know, but it can also depend a lot on the specific groove and even the melody of the song. If you're playing a groove that's fairly busy, then that one might not be so hard to avoid rushing with, because if you're playing very slow but it's busy, it's probably going to settle in nicely. But if you're playing something more open and more simple, that's going to be much easier to rush. But I think it is interesting how if the melody of a song is a busier melody with a lot of words crammed in, because you're hearing that as you're playing, that can make it easier to not rush because you're hearing all this information and it helps keep you as a drummer held back. But if the melody is really simple and the groove is really simple, that's when it's really easy to rush. It can become very uncomfortable sometimes. And so those are the factors that can determine that tempo threshold. And so it could be 90 beats per minute, it could be 60 beats per minute. So 3 technique tips, 3 things that you can apply to your practicing and what you're working on today to improve your time and avoid rushing these slow grooves. Number 1, and honestly these are gonna be pretty simple, this one's especially simple, practice the groove 5 BPM slower than the tempo it needs to be played at. I've done this a lot, and I've done the same on the other end of this, practice something 5 clicks faster and then pulled it back because I was having trouble keeping up because it was fast. So it works that way also. But if you've got to play a slow ballad at 60 beats a minute, get it solid at 55, which is even harder, and make it feel good there, nice and relaxed, and then when you go to 60, it's not gonna feel so bad. Number 2, this is kind of an interesting one, play intentionally behind the click. So if the click is right here, try to play just a little bit behind it. Let the click land a little before you and play just a hair behind it, which is kind of weird at first and it can be very uncomfortable, especially if you're more accustomed to playing right on the click or even ahead. But that can help a lot. You can even experiment with laying the snare back a little bit. What I'm gonna do is, because you're not gonna hear the click, but I will, I'm just gonna lay the snare back, which can also help a lot in playing more relaxed and not rushing. You get the idea, and so you can really force yourself, in a way, force yourself into submission with this and make your snare hand, your 2 and 4 backbeat lean back a little bit, or make the whole thing lean back. And so that can help you really get into that mindset of relaxing and not rushing something. Tip number 3, pull out your practice pad, or it doesn't have to be on your pad, but it's something that you can practice on your practice pad. Slow quarter notes. Which in a way can be very uncomfortable, but it forces you to think about the rebound and the entire motion. You want to make sure everything's smooth, nothing's jerky. Because if that's what's going on, then that's going to cause, from a technique standpoint, it's going to cause your playing to trip over itself and rush. So make sure that your technique is in check and that the rebound is smooth. Also, it's one thing to do that well on a pad, it's another to incorporate it onto the kit. And so you can also take that to the kit and start playing fills, making sure that your grip, your rebound, your sticks are nice and big and open as you're moving around the kit. Of course, if you're playing more quietly, then that's not so much the case, but you still want to make sure it's a smooth motion. The looser and the more natural your motion, the easier it's going to be to not rush. But there's also an important psychological factor, which is sort of our factor number 4, tip number 4 here. And this is my theory that I think we as humans, we're uncomfortable with space. And I don't mean like the physical space around you. Most of us like space around us. We don't want people to encroach on our space sometimes. But a lot of us don't like silence, and it makes us uneasy and uncomfortable. In the car, we always want to listen to music. Around the house, if we're home by ourselves and it's too quiet, we got to turn on the TV or turn on the radio, turn on some music or podcast or something. And also, if you're having a conversation with somebody and there's that sudden lull in the conversation, that's always awkward. Lulls in conversation are always awkward. I think everybody's probably with me on that. And it's because there's something about silence and something about a lack of noise that can make us very uneasy. And I think that's a really interesting psychological discussion for another video on another channel probably. But I think that applies directly to the drums. Sometimes it's more uncomfortable and difficult to not play than it is to play. So if we're playing a big, open, spaced out kind of groove, that can be very uncomfortable. I mean, a groove kind of like this, where there's just not a lot of notes involved. Something kind of like that, where when you're going that slow and it's that wide open, that's uncomfortable. It can make you uneasy to play it because you want to throw in extra notes. You want to maybe go to 16ths right here, do some more kick stuff, and that can be really hard to do. One of the most beneficial exercises that a drum teacher's had me do was in college, when my teacher made me play a simple groove and strip it. Well, actually, it was not a simple groove starting out, but it became more simple. We stripped it down to the bare bones basics, to something like what I just did. And then we said, okay, loop it over and over again, and don't add anything to it. Don't add any fills, don't add any little frills, or even it's always fun to add that bump bump at the end of a measure, but don't even do that. Don't add ghost notes. Don't add in any extra notes on the timekeeping hand. Keep it simple and keep it that same way over and over again. Then after 4 measures, add one new thing. Another 4 measures, add another new thing, and gradually add things and then subtract them away, which is a really great exercise that makes you listen. It causes you to suddenly start playing from your ears more and not so much from your hands. And I think that's a big part of this too. And doing that can really help you become less uncomfortable with awkward space. All right, so I mentioned at the beginning, okay, there's one thing you can do away from your kit that'll also help, that you can be doing even in between practice sessions. And that is listen to music that has slow grooves in it. Listen to music that has a lot of space. We all love listening to upbeat songs, and upbeat, fast, energetic songs are fun, but spend some time listening to slower music that is less in your face, less tons of information going on, tons of that ear candy, so that it can actually teach you to be more musically patient and kind of get that space in your ear, so that when you do sit down at your kit, yeah, it's still gonna feel weird. You're gonna have to get used to the muscle, the physical feel of it. But as far as that musicality in your ear and everything inside your head goes, it's gonna be more natural because you've heard it before. You've already had that marinating inside your brain. If you're a metal drummer trying to learn jazz, go listen to a bunch of jazz. If you're a jazz player trying to learn heavy rock, go listen to heavy rock. There's no better way to really get yourself into the position of being able to play a style well than to spend a lot of time listening to it. And that's something you can do in between practice sessions, in the car, whenever. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some really good info. Be sure to share the video and become a Non-Glamorous subscriber if you haven't already. Hey, if you're serious about improving your groove and not rushing and not dragging and just becoming a better drummer overall, there is a free ebook for you linked in the description below. It's been helping countless drummers quickly get better at the drums by helping them understand what are the core essentials that we actually need to be practicing. That's what this book does, what you actually need to know on the drums. We really break it down into 5 areas of practice that when you incorporate those into your practice session, you'll really see some serious progress. So go check it out, it's totally free, I think you'll dig it. Thanks guys, and I will see you on the next video.